Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Beach Holdings 2001 Investment Masterclass. My name is Stephen Beach. I'm going to be doing a talk today. I'm really going to bring on some industry leaders into the masterclass, and we'll come to those very shortly. It really is a panel of experts that are going to share some insights into the market. We will have a question and answer session at the end, so please write your questions down as we go, and we will address them all at the end. Elliot Buell will be talking shortly after myself about market insights. That'll be some really critical and key information you want to be making notes of. We've got Joe Carbonaro who will teach you how to structure your investments and, more importantly, save some tax. And we have Marion at Capricorn Finance and educate you on how to leverage what cash you do have to maximise your returns on your investments. Who is Beach Holdings and who is Stephen Beach? Well, that's myself. I'm the CEO of Beach Holdings. It's important, really, the information we'll share with you today. It's important to understand where we've come from and who exactly we are. Hopefully it gives some credibility and insights into how we've managed to achieve several things in our history. And yeah, we'll go over to a quick overview, but then we'll move on to Elliot very shortly. So Beach Holdings, we're a market leading developer. We've been around for around 20 years now, so have a lot of industry expertise in the team that you can see there. And we've got various in-house departments that cover lots of our investments. So we'll come on to a little bit of that shortly. Okay. So about background, to hopefully give the credibility, we have delivered over 1,000 units to investors to date and achieved 97% occupancy in the rental platform that we have, Manchester Apartments, that we'll come on to shortly. We are award winners. You can see we're very proud this year to be nominated for the Residential Property Award. It's a Bespoke and Urban Developer of the Year and also Deal of the Year, and we'll come on to that very shortly. We do have a pipeline of 300 million in development, so that is really a sizable, I'm sure you'll agree, a sizable pipeline, and we have a lot of experts driving that pipeline, and we'll share the insights with you today to help really understand how at one point I was the smallest landlord in Manchester and North West to becoming one of the biggest in the industry. I'm really going to share a couple of core principles with you today that hopefully you can take away and use in your own investment making a decision. I think they'll be really useful. Okay, so really starting at the beginning, briefly, in 2001, I wanted to get into property, probably like some of you on the presentation seminar today, that it might be your first time and very nervous. I decided to invest into student housing in 2001, and there was two core principles. If there's one message you can take away today, it's these two core principles, and they will guarantee to drive your investment returns. Principle number one is really yield. You want to be fully focused on the yield your cash has got the power to give you. So that is a really core principle. Number two, I'm going to teach you and educate you on capital appreciation as well, and how to look for opportunities to get capital appreciation. Often it's the holy grail to get both married together. A lot of people do get reasonable yields of 4 or 5% in property, which certainly beats the current banks at virtually zero. And then some people get good capital appreciation. I've managed to devise a system that actually achieves both, and I'm happy to share that with you today. So in 2001, developed that first property. You can see there in Acomb Street. I had to highlight an area in Manchester. I had a very small deposit, and I had to highlight an area that really was going to experience huge capital appreciation. So I managed to identify an area, and there's lots of areas in Manchester, lots of areas in the UK that will experience huge capital appreciation, and I identified one just on the outskirts called Rusholme. So I bought my first house, and the core principle really was Who is that house for? It's going to be for students. So I wasn't particularly interested in my own personal opinion. I took the personality out of it. Interested in my friends or family. It's what the target market wanted. So I interviewed 100 students on the university steps and asked them exactly what they wanted to see, which at the time was a very fresh refurbished property, American fridge freezers, leather sofas, and etc, etc. So that's exactly what I delivered. I was very nervous when I developed my first property because I put it on the rental market, and I was very happy to get 30 inquiries for that. So I could only unfortunately take one, which meant the property I put to market, which was really good quality, and we'll see some of the quality soon, was 30 times oversubscribed. I turned 29 customers away, which is really very powerful. I'll teach you how you can do that today. Okay, so let's fast forward. By really being very tenant focused, I really grew my portfolio from 2001 up to 2014. We refurbished properties. We made a lot of mistakes, particularly on the quality of the products that went in there, but we learned from those mistakes. And actually from 2001 to about 2011, we became from the smallest student landlord to actually the biggest in Manchester, and that's how I'll come on to how I achieved that shortly. So we developed 100 properties in Rusholme. We had 450 tenants, and again, we were the biggest landlord. So the area in Rusholme experienced huge capital appreciation over that period, which was fantastic, and we also got really strong yields at over 7% by constantly focusing on the tenant. That's the one big takeaway today: be very tenant centric. Take any personality out of it. It's targeting the current demographic of your investment property. So a highlight in 2001 to 2014, we actually received a letter from Her Royal Highness Prince Charles, which is really the pinnacle of the career of Beach at that point. To get a congratulations letter from Prince Charles himself for quality or sustainability of our property, etc., was really fantastic, and it was a real proud moment in our careers. Okay, so that's my background. It was very tenant focused. It was developing 100 properties on the outskirts of Manchester. In 2014, I had a little bit of a problem. It was a good problem to have. I had a database of tenants, happy tenants that were renewing and driving occupants sitting there 100%. A lot of them were leaving me. They were leaving student area of Rusholme and Fallowfield at the time, and they were starting new jobs in the city centre. So this is what I migrated over to. We targeted a new part of Manchester, which is areas within the city centre. So like in 2001, when I had to identify an area for huge capital appreciation, I successfully did. I identified areas within Manchester city centre that again would get huge capital appreciation and very strong yields. I decided at this point to invite some co-investors alongside me, so some investors from London and Europe and all around the world to join me on the next part of my journey, and by working together we drove the capital appreciation as much as we could. So these investors came on board. You can see the first property there in 2014. It was actually on Princes Street. So Princes Street is a little bit dusty. It wasn't heavily invested in, but again, that's the kind of areas you want to be seeking out that are going to get that rise of capital appreciation. So that was 2014, and again, very nervously put it to the market. And if you remember, in my first student property was 30 times oversubscribed. The first property for the professional market was actually 70 times oversubscribed. So again, we turned customers away. In this case, it was 69 customers away for every single property we put to market, which is a real proud moment. So let's move forward and move on to some really interesting facts and figures. In 2000, you can see there David Cameron has just popped up, who was the Prime Minister at the time. Probably a highlight of the city centre career was David Cameron sending us a letter and congratulating our work, again for sustainability and delivering quality units to the rental market. And some on the seminar today will recognise that gentleman on the right hand side. I'm shaking hands with Sir Howard Bernstein, arguably the most powerful guy in the north of England. He came to launch our rental our Manchester apartments you can see in the background, and that's something we'll come on to later. Whoever you decide to invest with, it's really very important and focus on the management company that will be handling your investments if you're not a full-time investor. So just finishing off, that's our background. Hopefully it gives you the credibility for the facts and figures we're going to be coming on to very shortly. We really do know what we're on about. And it wasn't just myself, obviously, that delivered all those properties. There's a big team of industry leaders that are brought on board, and you're going to be hearing from one of them very shortly. Just to finish off, on the timeline there, you can see that logo, Ames Holdings. So Ames were an investor. They came along, one of the biggest investors in Saudi Arabia. I think it's the second biggest family office in Saudi Arabia. Really fantastic people. They really had a great relationship with them, and they came on board as a customer. They bought 163 apartments, about £39 million worth of apartments, and enjoyed capital appreciation like the other investors and engaged strong yields. And then they decided to actually invest again in Beach Holdings itself. And this was fantastic because we've delivered 1,000 units to date. We've got 1,000 more in our pipeline in Manchester alone, and the partnership with Ames really will help us drive and deliver those units as fast as possible. Remember, we have a huge database and a huge customer base that want these apartments. We just can't build them quickly enough, and we really welcome Ames's support to do that. Okay. So that's a bit about our background and sharing some of my knowledge and learnings there. Let's just go on to a small video now that will show you a bit about the quality we're talking about. Again, before we come on to the video, it's really important, whoever you decide to invest with, it is going to be someone that can manage your property, that will deliver your property. There's a lot of schemes out there that have been late or not been delivered at all. So track record is important, and a fully managed service is also very important. Okay, so this is, you can see in the background there, Basil House, and we'll come on to that next. So enough of me talking, let's just go on to a video of what kind of quality I'm talking about. Okay, so this is the entrance. So imagine you're a 22, 23-year-old and you've got your first job in Manchester, and this is just a studio apartment we deliver. It's really high quality. That's the first thing you notice as a 22, 23-year-old, which is the target market for ourselves on this product. It's really high quality. You had Bosch appliances there, quartz worktops, really high-end fittings, really cool lighting. You'll see there's no carpet there. It's not good for maintenance, and it'll often be replaced. We have Antico with a 20-year guarantee. We don't have fabric sofas, we have leather sofas. Again, keeping your operational costs low. One thing you should be focusing on is your net yield. It's no good getting a 5% gross and coming out with one net because maintenance costs are so high. So that's another really point you need to be focused on, the operational costs of it. Why have I spent so much money? You can see it's a really high-end product. It's because they need to drive occupancy as high as they can. As there's a blended rate across all our apartments, that's 97%. I'm really proud of that number. Tenants renew, they pay rent, which creates value, income, and ultimately return for myself and investors. So that's one of our rental products. We'll just finish off. You can see we're just nipping into the utility room there. Why we show that, we do Bosch appliances. Sometimes cheapest is the dearest. Developers will often put cheap appliances and fittings in there, etc. I can't stress enough, going for a quality premium product will yield you long-term results. So that's enough of me. Let's see what someone else has got to say about it. We actually had fortunate enough to have Gary come over last week from UA92. Some of them may have heard of him from Manchester United. So let's see what Gary Neville has to say about the beach product.
But one of the main things, obviously, is the quality and security of student accommodation. We've got fantastic accommodation here at Academy Apartments. They really are apartments that you could live in, not just actually as a student, but beyond that as well, in terms of in your life. In fact, I'll be very comfortable in here overlooking Old Trafford and so close to where, obviously, you are taught over at UA92. It's absolutely fantastic. The security is good, which I think is really important, particularly if you've got parents that are bringing, their young children, the sort of that big moment in their life where they're handing them over, if you like, to someone else, and it's that big jump. But I would feel really comfortable sort of sending my children here.
you go. Gary would send his own children to the quality of apartments we're delivering, which is again another proud day moment for us. So just finishing off, quick overview of the kind of stuff we've delivered, and really the key takeaways are going for quality, seeking an area of large capital appreciation and very strong yields with a good management company. The core principles and mistakes I've made over the years, but I've learned from them, and that's why we've delivered this portfolio. So just a couple of brief examples, and I'm going to hand over to Elliot within the next minute. 90 Princess Street, I'll talk about this development because I was really proud of it. It's the first one. We delivered 35 studio 1 and 2 bedroom apartments to market. I mention this because we delivered 35% capital appreciation for both myself and the investors, which was really a proud moment. We've got Basil House there. It's 100% occupied, that property, from day one. That's a key takeaway there. You can see the quality, so you can understand why people both renew, and the occupancy is so high. I'll touch upon West Point briefly because that was actually 317 apartments. Again, very tenant focused. These were more compact apartments because on the outskirts of Manchester, listening to tenants that want affordable pricing, and also investors that want value as well to drive those yields and those returns up. And I'm really proud that particular block was 100% occupied on day one of completion. So often you'll find, and a lesson to take away from this seminar, is developers will hand you the keys, be it remotely, some of you international investors, and leave you to it, and you've got to go off over the next few weeks or months to get a management agent who start to advertise it. At Manchester Apartments, the lettings on, we advertise our apartments 1 year away from completion. So on day one, you're getting those returns, you've got that occupied, and they're paying the rent, you're getting your incomes, and you roll that investment. So that's a big takeaway from today. Okay, so this is pretty much the final slide. I won't talk about all these, but it's constantly delivery, track record. Whoever you decide to partner with, really look at their track record and have they delivered, and if they're consistent delivered over the years. There's no point investing in a cheaper property if you're not actually going to get handed it on time or handed it at all. So it's a big focus is on that track record. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to introduce Elliot is an industry leading expert, as I said before. He's 15 years experience in the industry, and he's going to give you some real insight into the UK as a whole. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to Elliot, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Hi, everyone. My name is Elliot Vior, and I'm the sales director here at Beach Holdings in Manchester. So today we're going to be looking at the UK property market in a lot more granular level detail. We're going to identify potential areas for investment this coming year, and also look at some of the different regions across the UK and look at some data that underlines different successful areas you should be considering for investment. Here's a picture of me before I had my second child recently. I'm glad that you can't actually see what I look like today after many sleepless nights. So it's good to be able to put a face to the name. Let's look at the UK property market overall, and importantly, why people actually invest in property in the UK. We've actually got a lot of attendees from all over the world, many from overseas, who are joining us today. And I think importantly, the UK property market, it offers great stability and a market and strong laws that also govern the country, and importantly, protect both the buyers and the sellers of property. The main reason, alongside the stability and security, however, that underpins the success of the UK property market is the imbalance between supply and demand. Just some data over here that we've got at the moment: 250,000 new properties need to be built every single year just to keep up with the level of demand on the UK housing market. Incredibly, we're only in a position to actually deliver 170,000 properties each and every single year. That's a shortfall of 80,000 properties being built and delivered in the UK every single year, with 32% behind target. So it's that huge undersupply of property which is really driving the success of property investments across the UK. Now, as Stephen highlighted during his presentation, it's really that location which is key to delivering any successful investment. A great location leads to both stronger rental returns as well as long-term capital growth. So when it comes to actually identifying the right area for property investment, you should really be looking for an area where the population outweighs the supply of housing. You want to be identifying areas in cities or towns where there is that real imbalance between supply and demand. You should also be looking out for areas where there's potential for future capital growth, be it regeneration projects. Is the local council or the government investing into growing and improving perhaps the infrastructure? Is there an improvement to the rail links? Is there an improvement to the transport network? Really identify those areas. Is there a new regeneration zone where there's offices being built? All of these things are real key indications of where you should be looking to actually make that investment. Importantly, is there a young population? It's young people who are renting property. On average, the age of the first-time buyer is growing. By 2035, there's some data that suggests it's going to be over 40 years old, the age of the first-time buyer. So it's young people who are going to be your tenants, the people who are going to be renting your property and making you money. Another thing to look out for, migration of big businesses. Many big businesses are actually leaving cities like London due to costs. The cost of office space in central London is astronomical. And with many businesses moving to other regional cities, they're often taking their workforces with them. And this is a real indication the people who are going to be renting your properties moving forward. Finally, things to look out for, some institutional investment. Are family offices, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, are these people actually investing in the area? They'll be spending thousands of pounds on research and looking into the best areas for investments. If these types of people are investing into a town or city, it's a good indication that you should be doing that too. So I want to actually now look at London, the capital, the city which you'll all have heard of and come across before, and mirror that against a city such as Manchester. And it's no secret that 10, 15 years ago, London offered a real opportunity to investors, and it wasn't too difficult to find. There was lots of good investment opportunities in the capital, and many investors would have made some fantastic money from investing in the capital itself. In recent years, however, it has become incredibly expensive, largely unaffordable for many, and has offered minimal rental returns, minimal rental yields, which have really started to make people look elsewhere. There's been an affordability ceiling with very little room for growth, and looking at some of the actual data available from Rightmove themselves, the average property price in the capital now is staggering £650,000. When you factor in stamp duty costs of potentially up to £26,000 if you own property elsewhere, the average rental yields across the capital is under 3%, 2.9% there. Compare that against a city like Manchester, where the average property price is £220,000. Stamp duty is significantly cheaper, just over £6,000, and rental yields at over 5%. It just highlights that there's other cities other than London where you should be investing your capital, and Manchester really stands out from the crowd. So looking at Manchester as a city for investment, why should you be considering this city for investment? Well, data from people such as JLL and Savills highlight Manchester as consistently the best city in the UK for investment. We have the second largest airport outside of London, an international airport with world-leading universities, and importantly, that relocation of big businesses. Many big businesses such as Amazon, BBC, ITV have all relocated and set up their UK head offices and regional head offices in the city of Manchester. House prices in Manchester are expected to grow by over 17% over the next 5 years. Rental growth over 16% over the next 5 years. And incredibly, the region, the Greater Manchester region, over 2.75 million people living across the Greater Manchester region now, and that's forecast to grow to over 3 million people by 2035. That huge growth in population is really what's driving the property market here. We're a globally connected city, connecting to over 210 destinations globally. The airport itself is going through a regeneration, over £1 billion being spent on it. And importantly, one of the key things to take away, it is the arrival of HS2, which by 2050, that's going to double the economic output of Manchester to over £132 billion by 2050. And that's going to reduce travel times between Manchester to London. It's going to take only 67 minutes. So quite conceivably, you'll be able to commute between London and Manchester. HS2 and the creation of HS2 alone is going to bring 90,000 new jobs to the city and increase demand on housing by over 16,000 properties, all real big drivers to what's driving the success of Manchester and the Manchester property market. So just to put some data in terms of the migration of big businesses and all of the people who are moving to Manchester. Commercial property, as I said, is much more affordable in Manchester than it is in London. And the BBC and ITV all moved over to Manchester and the Media City area of Salford Quays in 2010. 88 young professionals are leaving London every single day to regional cities like Manchester. Last year alone, Manchester, 800,000 square foot of office space was tenanted. And you'll have seen in the news recently that the BBC have further announced that 22,000 jobs are moving from London, the majority of those moving to Media City, UK, in Manchester and Salford Quays. They're the target people who you want to be renting and living in your properties. And just across the bottom here are just some examples of some of the businesses that currently have operations in Manchester. You'll have heard of many of these before. BT, Amazon, KPMG, Siemens, Kellogg's, all have big regional or UK head offices in the city of Manchester. Now, Manchester is a city of young people. It has some world-class universities. Just some of the demographics. As I mentioned, it's a young city. The average age of people within the centre of Manchester is 33 compared to the national average of 40. Changes of attitudes in home ownership. So the average age of the first-time buyer is expected to be over 40 by 2035. And these are the people who are going to be living in your property. Manchester's student population is key. Across the universities in Manchester, over 100,000 students, with only 24,000 purpose-built student beds available for those people. And now, I mean, as Stephen mentioned, it's those graduates, it's the people who leave university and who become young graduates, young professionals in the city, and 60%, so 60,000 new graduates to the city of Manchester each and every single year. All who need housing, all who want to live in the best possible areas where there's the nightlife, there's the bars and the restaurants. Those people are going to be looking to live in the city centre. So as we've identified, Manchester has a huge undersupply of population across compared to the rest of the UK. So as we've shown, 2.75 million people living in Manchester. It's the biggest population outside of London. Over the last 10 years, the population of Manchester alone has grown by 19%, the largest growth of any regional city in the UK. And by 2035, there's going to be over 3 million people living in the city of Manchester alone, which is a huge level of growth over the next 10 to 15 years. And just in the city centre of Manchester alone, 35,000 more people are expected to be living here by 2025. So in only 4 years from now, an additional 35,000 people living in the city centre. So looking at the city centre of Manchester alone, 11,000 new homes need to be built every single year just to keep up with the level of demand. And currently, we're only building 7,000 new homes each and every single year in Manchester. So that's a total shortfall of 4,000 homes every single year. So if you look at this and keep on track, by 2035, there's going to be a shortfall of 60,000 homes in the city centre of Manchester alone, which is one of the key reasons why there's so much construction, why there's so much demand for investment property in the city of Manchester. So looking at Manchester alone, just a couple of areas that you may wish to consider when it comes to investment. If we've identified Manchester as the best possible city, looking at either the city centre of Manchester, where there's a huge representation of big businesses and strong rental yields of over 5%, Or you may wish to look at an area such as Media City in Salford Quays, as well, a home to over 250 businesses and over 19,000 students studying at the University of Salford. Again, average rental yields of over 5%, significantly higher than somewhere like London. I don't want to spend too much time looking at a couple of opportunities that you may wish to invest in Manchester. If you are interested in looking at any of these opportunities in more detail, you can get in contact. But one such development we've got is our Weavers House development in Salford Quays, a perfect development for anyone who's looking to make potentially a full capital investment, who's looking for strong guaranteed returns starting later this year. And maybe those people who have already invested in Manchester and want to invest in an area like Salford Quays, right next to BBC, right next to ITV, and only a few minutes away from Salford Royal Hospital. A perfect location, a perfect development for junior doctors, young professionals working at BBC, at ITV in Media City. As with all the beach products, fully furnished and developed to an incredible standard. You will have seen from Stephen's video before just the level of quality. So this is a Beach Holdings quality bedroom, living and kitchen area. Again, further living space in the bedroom. Kitchen, fully integrated kitchen, quartz work surfaces, Antico flooring. All of the features that you saw in Stephen's video is what you can come to be expect as standard across the beach developments. So we've got the Weavers House in Salford Quays, an area of over 33,000 people living and working in the area. Prices in this development start from £125,000. It's fully managed and hassle-free from Manchester Apartments, Beach Holdings in-house lettings and management team. And there's also a 7% net yield, which is guaranteed on that development for 2 years. Another quick development that you may be interested in, if you're more interested towards Manchester city centre, if you want a product that you could potentially mortgage, and Marion later on in this presentation will talk to you about financing and some of the financing options available in the UK. This is perfect for anyone who's looking to for more flexibility. They may be interested in using the property themselves, or someone who wants to invest in one of the most luxurious properties on the market in Manchester city centre. Right in the heart of the city, in the Ancoats district, one of the coolest, trendiest areas in the city of Manchester, right by Noma, the main CBD area of Manchester, the commercial business district, right by all the shops, restaurants, bars, everything that Manchester has to offer. And again, the team here at Beach Holdings can give you more information on this property if it is something you would like to look at. The development itself, 5-star hotel-like facilities and amenities, so commercial-sized duplex gym. We have some private roof gardens where you can enjoy the outdoor space, have a glass of wine, a cup of coffee, invite your friends up there and socialise in the space. A big residence coffee lounge if you want to get out of your apartment and utilise some of the further space in the building. And importantly, some co-working space. As we've seen with COVID and more people working from home, co-working space within a development is key, and that's something that Ancoats Gardens has to offer. Some final points on Ancoats Gardens before I hand over. Again, fully furnished to the Beach Holdings standard and built and developed to an incredible specification. So an Ancoats Gardens bedroom, you can see the quality there. An integrated kitchen, all Bosch appliances, something you can come to expect as standard with Beach. Big open plan dining spaces and living spaces, exposed concrete, high ceilings, floor to ceiling windows, something that's available on the market today. And some nice big open living spaces, something which all those young professionals at Amazon, at BBC, at ITV, somewhere they would be proud to call their home. So just some final data on Ancoats Gardens. An area such as Ancoats with high demand, prices available from just under £250,000, a projected 7% return and 3% capital appreciation each year. And this property can be mortgaged and you can make your cash work harder for you by leveraging or gearing up that investment. So thank you very much. Thank you. It was good to get across some of the facts and the figures and some of the data around Manchester. I'm now going to hand over to Joe Carbonaro at Get Ground, who is going to give you some details and some information on how to best structure the properties that you're going to purchase and make it as tax efficient as possible. So thank you very much.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah, thank you, Elliot. So I'm going to be talking to you about limited company structures, which seems to be pretty much the topic of the day at the moment. So I hope you guys take some interest in this. I have given a similar presentation not so long ago with the National Residential Landlords Association. So if there's anybody that's seen this before, I do apologise. So get ground. So you found your first fantastic investment, or this may be your second or third fantastic investment if you're a portfolio landlord, and you'd like to think about structuring. Then I'd say the two most common ways of purchasing a property at the moment anyway are buying in your personal name and using a limited company structure. So what we do here at Get Ground is we specialize in the setup, structuring, and ongoing management and accounting of limited companies for the specific purposes of facilitating your buy-to-let investments. Okay, so we're not setting up company structures for plumbing businesses or anything like that. We are specifically focused on making your money work harder. A little bit on the regulatory side. So we are authorised by the Financial Conduct Authority here in the United Kingdom. We're registered with the Information Commissioner's Office, and we take your data protection very, very seriously. We have taken a direct capital investment from the UK government. And finally, we are recommended suppliers for the National Residential Landlords Association, the NRLA. Cool. So what do we actually do? I think traditionally speaking, if you were going to go out and set up a limited company structure, you'd probably need a little bit of help, an accountant, a tax advisor, a bank manager to sort you out a company bank account. You might want a company secretary if you're particularly busy. And really, I think in the most part, it tends to be a little bit of a domain of the rich and famous of the world. And I think whenever you have a situation where you're trying to buy a property which already has lawyers and and various different parties involved, the last thing anybody wants is the hassle and the expense of involving 4 or 5 different people in trying to help you structure this investment. So what we've really set out to do here at Get Ground is to merge all of those parties into one place and essentially bring everybody into the kind of education process around limited companies, effectively helping you set up a limited company structure without that hassle and without those high fees. And I'll touch a little bit on that later on. So Get Ground set up a UK limited company for you. All right, we will do the complete setup of that company structure, and then we will put that structure in place. Okay, so your legal documents, your accounting, bank accounts, so on and so forth. And then once that property is inside that company structure, we will then do absolutely everything required to manage that company structure on your behalf. Okay, so all of your accounting, all of your company tax returns, tax filing, any amendments to any legal documents that you might need, so amendments to your shareholders agreements and things like that. Secretarial services, which is a little bit of a broad term, but this is basically all of the secretarial duties for the management of that company structure, we will look after for you. So that's anything from uploading your receipts, conducting your AGMs, so on and so forth. And finally, if you're an overseas buyer, use of a registered office address, which is a nice shiny office in central London in Hammersmith, where you can have Beach Holdings, if they're managing that property for you, send the receipts to your company's registered office address, and we will look after that from an accounting perspective. So we are really doing here absolutely everything that you need with regards to the setup, structuring, and ongoing management and accounting of a limited company structure. So next question is obviously, why would I use a company structure? Why do people use it? Why is it becoming probably the most common method of actually structuring an investment property? And I think to kind of give you a little bit of a context to this, when we were kind of coming up with Get Ground many moons ago, and we sat around the table with the government, with our taxation advisors and our accountants, we wanted to come up with a company structure which would help you as an investor to do 3 things. How can we maximize your profit? How can we increase the amount of flexibility that you actually have with an investment property? And how can we reduce your personal level of risk? And what we arrived at was two key things. The first was to advocate for one property for every company that you have. Okay, so for every property that you buy, we advocate a separate limited company structure. And don't worry, I'll be explaining the reasons for that very shortly. And the next thing is to on setup of that company, have a whole host of additional legal documents in place, which give you more flexibility and more protection as well. So things like a shareholders agreement, an owner's loan document, articles of association, and so on and so forth. Now, when you adopt those two principles, so one property per limited company and the legal documents in place, you actually give yourself access to the all of the advantages of a property holding company. The first one is tax efficiency. So I'm just going to park that for a second. I will come back to that. It's probably the most exciting part of what we do. So save the best till last, so to speak. Limited personal liability. Essentially, whenever we go out and we buy an investment property, wherever it is in the world, that comes with it its own level of risk. Now, it's worth mentioning, even though we're not advisors, that real estate investing is generally thought of as being quite low risk. However, we typically see two types. The first is a financial risk. So an example of a financial risk could be tenant stops paying the rent, default on the mortgage, and repossession of the property. All right. Again, very, very low risk, but that's a pretty tenuous example of a financial risk. The second type of risk is a physical risk. So you buy a brand new apartment and a wall falls down, or something physical happens with that apartment. So it's very, very important whenever we're buying an investment property to isolate those two types of risk from A, our personal property, our own house, our own car, and B, the other buy-to-lets within our investment property portfolio. And I've worked in property for quite a while, and in many moons ago, I had a client who came into some inheritance, and what this guy decided to do was to go out and buy 6 properties in one kind of foul swoop. And against better judgment at the time, what he decided to do was to put all of these 6 properties into just one limited company structure. Later found out there was an accident, unfortunately, in one of his properties, and the tenant decided to take him and his limited company structure to court. And unfortunately, he ended up losing 2 of those 6 properties from that limited company structure. Now, needless to say, if he'd have isolated each of those properties within its own separate legal entity, its own limited liability company, the maximum liability that he has from a financial risk would never have exceeded that one property. Okay, it is worth mentioning that having a limited company structure doesn't absolve you of criminal liability, but it does help to keep our levels of risk low. The next point is easily buy and sell with others, and I think this should really read increased flexibility. Again, with one property per limited company, we have a lot more flexibility with what we can actually do with these assets that we now own from an ownership perspective. For example, this property that I'm talking to you from now is my family home. I own it as tenants in common with my fiance, and I have a young son. Okay, if I ever want to make changes to how I own this property, for example, give a part of this property to my son, the process is phenomenally legally restrictive, offsetting capital gains and so on and so forth. But if I have this property contained within a limited company structure, I can make a gift of shares within that company at any time without restriction. Therefore, if I wanted to gift my son all of the shares in my buy-to-let owning property company, I can do just that. Now, there are, of course, implications to that, inheritance tax, possible capital gains tax implications, but nonetheless, you have the flexibility to be able to make decisions about your assets in a much more easy, much more cost-efficient way. And that leads me on to estates and inheritance planning. So limited company structures really help when it comes to estates and inheritance planning. We had a gentleman not so long ago who wanted to, was of retirement age. He was about sort of 72, 73, I think he was in age. And he wanted to buy a buy-to-let for his 2 grandchildren. So, but he had a bit of a conundrum insofar as what he really wanted was to keep all of the rental yield from that property for himself, but to make sure that his grandchildren actually owned the property. So what he did was he incorporated a limited company structure with 100 shares, allocated himself as 1% shareholder and a directorship, his wife as 1% shareholder and a director, and they made a couple of amendments to the shareholders agreement, and gave their 2 grandchildren 49 shares and 49 shares respectively. Now, what that meant in practical terms was granddad could keep all of the rent from that property, so live on whilst he was still alive, supplementing his retirement. But when he passes away, and it's time for the government and the solicitor to look at the estates and inheritance liability, he only owned 1 share or 1% of that property, and therefore the children's inheritance tax, if anything, was 40% of his 1% or 0.4% of the property price. So having a limited company structure can help us to mitigate against a lot of the associated difficulty and a lot of the associated costs of inheritance planning. Okay. We also want to make sure that whenever we make decisions about inheritance planning, we do it at a property by property level. If you have 6 properties and you put them all into one limited company structure, you are forced in a roundabout way to give 50% to one child, 50% to another child. But what you might actually want to be able to do is to give 3 specific properties to your daughter because you love her more than your son, and 3 specific properties to your son. Okay, because he annoyed you with his grades at school. So we have much more flexibility with what we can do from an inheritance and estates planning perspective if we use 1 property per limited company structure. And the final thing is mortgage market. So I won't talk too much about this because the guys at Capricorn will follow me up, but having 1 property per limited company is generally considered the most transparent way to structure a limited company, and therefore you give yourself access to the largest pool of mortgage products in the market. So let's move on to tax, probably why a lot of you are tuned into me right now. The best way of looking at taxes is at every single stage of the property investment life cycle, buying it, owning it, and selling it, and the differences between personal and a limited company structure. So first things first, stamp duty. There is absolutely no difference if you are purchasing this property as a buy-to-let. Your specific purpose is to rent it out. There is no difference between buying property in a personal name and a limited company from a stamp duty perspective. Okay, £10,000 in a personal, £10,000 in a company structure. Where the benefits really start to kick in is when we actually own these properties, or when we own and we're operating this property. The first key difference is the difference between income tax and corporation tax. Income tax has 3 bandings. 0%, which is £0 to £12,500. Most people in the UK use that in their salary. 12,000 up to just under £50,000, which is a 20% tax bracket, and above £50,000, which is 40%. If you have a limited company structure that turns over less than £50,000 a year, of which you will if you only have 1 property within it, your corporation tax rate is 19%, 19. Okay. Furthermore, anything that we have that represents a cost, so mortgage interest, ground rent, service charge, Beach Holdings property management costs, is tax deductible. And what that means is you don't pay corporation tax on the proportion of your income that represents those costs, which is great. Okay, so we end up paying, generally speaking, less tax for the position that we're in on a lesser proportion of our income. Furthermore, with limited companies, we've got much more ability to actually take income from our property. Most people know about dividends. Dividends do have a personal income tax liability for people based here in the UK. If you are based overseas, there is no UK tax to pay if you take money from a dividend, provided you are an overseas resident. Now, if you're a UK resident, most people choose to take what we call an owner's loan repayment. An owner's loan repayment, put simply, is we use the deposit that you make for your apartment or house as an owner's loan. And what that means is we loan your limited company the money for the deposit, but in turn, your limited company is obliged to pay that loan back. Any money that is taken as an owner's loan repayment does not have any personal taxation implication. And what that means is after you've paid corporation tax is tax-free. Okay. The final thing is a director's pension contribution. You can make a pension contribution as an expense, and we allow up to £10,000 for every limited company structure that you have. Any money that you move across to a qualifying pension pot, because it's an expense, you can move across tax-free. Okay. Moving forward, selling the property. I'm quite conscious of time here. Any property that you have within a limited company structure with GetGround, you actually have the ability not just to sell the property out of the limited company structure, but also to sell the company itself or sell the shares of that company. Now, there are two really big advantages to this. The first is if you sell the shares in your company, your capital gains tax rate is lower. So capital gains tax is a tax that we pay on the profit that you make when you sell the property. So if you buy a property for £100,000, sell it for 120, your capital gains tax is paid on the £20,000 profit. And finally, if you have a company, if you're selling the shares in your company, anyone who is buying that company structure from you doesn't pay stamp duty on that purchase. Okay, because what they're buying is shares, not a property. So I'll give you a bit of an example of this. If you're clever about this, you can really make this work to your advantage. So we had a gentleman, it's about a year ago now actually, who was based in Saudi, and he had a studio flat in Kensington in West London, contained within a company structure that GetGround had set up for him. He wanted to sell the property, so he listed it on Rightmove, and the agent came back and said the property was worth about £500,000. Now, pre-COVID, pre all the madness that we're going through in the market at the moment today, the stamp duty for an investor on that property would normally have been about £40,000. So when he was offered, made an offer for the property by an investor, he said to the investor, well, look, why don't you buy the limited company structure from me for £520,000, and you then have £20,000 in your pocket to go and buy a furniture pack or renovate the apartment as you see fit. So we can use these mechanisms to our advantage. So how does this actually look? How do we actually generate a return? What does it actually look like from a tangible perspective? So this is a post-tax investment return scenario, and we've had a little bit of a kind of working through this. We've made some assumptions. The assumptions are that this investor is a non-UK resident, so based abroad, but that they are taxed at the high rate in England and Wales. They purchase a property for just under £500,000, producing a gross rent of £20,000 a year. The investor uses a 70% interest-only mortgage at a rate of 3% interest. The property's value goes up every year by 3% per annum, which is actually less than you can expect in Manchester at the moment, and they sell it after 5 years. Someone who sells the shares in their company can expect to be 66% better off than someone buying their property in the personal ownership capacity. Someone who sells their property the old-fashioned way, so selling it to a buyer and closing the company down, will be 52% better off. We find most of our UK buyers are anywhere between sort of 5–10% better off and 40% better off, dependent on their scenario. So what do we charge for this service? Each company holds just one property, as I mentioned. There is a one-time sign-up fee or a company creation cost, which is £600. All right, so £500 plus VAT. It's worth mentioning at this point, if you guys are buying through Beach Holdings, we will only ever charge you for the first 2 companies that you create. And what that means is you can technically structure your entire property portfolio here in the UK for £1,200 including VAT, which is phenomenally cost effective. Again, that's to set up the company structure for you, structure it using the legal documentation that we provide, put a company bank account in place for you, and then we have an annual company running cost, which is actually a monthly subscription of £24 a month, so £20 a month plus VAT. And again, just to reiterate what that's for: accounting, tax filing, all of your legal documents and any changes that you might need, a company secretary and all the associated secretarial services, and a use of a registered office address as well. All right. So I hope that's been helpful for you. My name's Joseph Carbonaro. They have my contact details, and I'm sure the guys at Beach will be sending through the presentation slides here as well. I can be contacted if you have specific questions or if you have specific requirements that you'd like to discuss. I hope you found that useful. Appreciate I whizzed through it, but again, hope you found that useful. And it's a pleasure to be able to hand over to the guys at Capricorn.
Hi there, Joe. Thanks for that. Nice to meet you, everyone. Let me just share my screen very quickly. Okay, great. So first of all, thanks very much to Stephen and Elliot at Beach, and also Joe for running through the get ground information. Now that we've kind of learned about some of the opportunities regarding the properties and the different kind of ownership structures available, I'm going to run through some of the details on the mortgages that are available on UK property, both for home ownership and for buy-to-let. Just to introduce myself, my name's Marian Jenkov, and I'm the director of our Hong Kong office. So just to tell you a little bit about Capricorn itself. So we've been going for about 16 years now. We're actually London's largest independent mortgage brokerage firm. Our primary office is in London. We've got about 50 advisors there and a staff of about 70. About 18 months ago, we set up a Singapore office, kind of due to the high demand of our introducers around the world, particularly in Southeast Asia. And we've recently set up a Hong Kong office, which myself and my colleague Gavin are working from. In terms of what we kind of specialize in, the developers that we work with, are some of the most well-known in the market. So we really are experts in this field. While we're very happy to deal with new build properties, very happy to deal with existing properties that are based all over the UK as well. The majority of the lending that we do is in England and Wales, but we can also arrange finance in Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. So that's something just to consider. In terms of kind of the specialist financing that we can arrange, while we're very, our team in London are very well suited to dealing with the UK-based clients. We do have kind of some specialist areas within the business as well. So myself, I'm in part of the international team, and we really do help clients from all over the world who are invested in UK property. We also have a Capricorn private clients department, which kind of specialise more with the higher value properties and higher value mortgages that you're looking to finance as well. Usually these can be kind of 1.5, £2 million plus. So yeah, we're very have the capabilities to be able to deal with that as well. It's not just the residential properties that we're able to arrange financing on. We're very happy to deal with commercial properties as well through our commercial team. So whether you're buying retail space, restaurants, maybe in terms of the kind of loan that you're looking for, it might be development financing, or if you're looking for some short-term lending, bridging loans are something that we can also also arrange. So we work with over 300 different agencies, agency offices around the world. Like I mentioned, we have our own offices in London, Singapore, and Hong Kong, but we're looking to expand that as well. We really are a whole of market brokerage firm, so we're an appointed representative of Openwork, which is the largest network in the UK, mortgage panel network in the UK, and also Commercial Finance Brokers UK. While we can look at the lenders that these guys offer, we're also able to go off panel. So we really do work with every lender that's available. These can be based in the UK, offshore, and then different jurisdictions around the world as well. And Openwork and CFB are regulated by the FCA. We do have this has actually increased to a 5-star rating on Google reviews, and it's up to almost 800 reviews now, which is something that we're extremely proud of. If you have a look on Google reviews, there's not too many financial services companies and companies in general that can boast a rating that high. So that's something that we're very proud of, and kind of just demonstrates the quality of service that we really do look to provide to all of our clients. So these are just some of the lenders that we deal with. As you'll be able to see, I'm sure you'll be familiar with a number of these high street lenders. So you've got your Barclays, HSBC, Nationwide, Halifax. These are high street lenders that we deal with, on a day-to-day basis. But then we do also have, a number of other lenders that we can look to work with, and it really allows us to basically have an option for any type of client that comes our way. So in terms of the international, some of these guys you might have heard of as well, but equally there's going to be a number which will be completely foreign to you, and that's really where we specialize, or why we have our different departments that specialize and can be experts in different fields. The private clients guys deal with primarily with the private banks. And then the commercial team also have a number of lenders that you just wouldn't be aware of if you were to kind of be looking through the market yourself. So in terms of the options that we have available, that's something that we feel like we really excel at, and can also offer that high quality of service. So in terms of the market at the moment, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, the Bank of England base rate is at a historic low. So this has been 0.1% for the best part of a year now, and it's never been this low before. There is a stamp duty holiday that has been extended in the March budget, which is going up until the end of June. So we are seeing an awful lot of applications go through at the moment, and people trying to complete prior to the end of that stamp duty holiday, because there's kind of tax savings of up to about £15,000. Unfortunately, this has caused some delays with processing and surveys or evaluations being conducted. However, it has kind of also led to an opportunity, as a number of new lenders have kind of entered the market during this time. While some lenders have entered the market, unfortunately some have withdrawn because they feel like the risk appetite is so uncertain at the moment. But the market is always changing, so there's plenty of options available. Where we are whole of market, and we do have kind of some extremely positive and strong relationships with lenders, we do actually have access to some exclusive products that you would not be able to find on the market unless you were to come through us. So just something for consideration that we can assist with there. In terms of the different lenders, obviously each lender has their own criteria and kind of their own personalized and customized lending policy. So we really can help help any kind of client. With regards to income requirements, there's usually a minimum. This can be kind of £25,000 or £30,000 a year, but where we do work with the more specialised lenders as well, they can kind of take a view on this. So we deal with a lot of high net worth individuals who might be asset rich or cash poor. Equally, they might have non-traditional streams of income, or be entrepreneurs that kind of your high street lenders wouldn't quite recognise, or wouldn't quite tick their box. So there's a number of different ways that we can, or different kind of avenues that we can pursue there. In terms of the loan to value that's available for clients, we do work with lenders who can go up to 80%. If you are going up to that higher loan to value, you're usually going to look at a slight premium in terms of the rate. The lower the loan to value, usually the lender can offer a slightly more competitive rate. So it's not just new purchases that we can assist with. Very happy to help with remortgages and also capital raises as well. The market is booming at the moment. So what we have seen that's quite common is people that might have, for example, a 60% loan to value mortgage on their property. The way that the market's been going, it's increased in value, and then we look to kind of refinance and raise a little bit more, kind of up to that 70% mark. So there's a real opportunity there if you're trying to free up some liquidity to take advantage of any of the new and upcoming opportunities that are available. Kind of following on from Joe's presentation, we're seeing a lot more at the moment. It's becoming an extremely common form of kind of structure to purchase properties through limited companies. Obviously, while GetGround specialise in creating UK limited companies, we can also arrange financing for limited companies that are based offshore or overseas as well. So whether that's based in the Channel Islands or BVI companies, for example, this is something that we can do as well. Guarantor and third-party mortgages. This is something that we've also seen is very common at the moment. The kind of standard and general example of this would be, for example, a client in Hong Kong, and they're looking to purchase, or they're looking to purchase a new property for their child who's at university in the UK, and they want the child to be the owner of the property. So, the parent could come in and provide a guarantor for that mortgage, effectively to a child who has no income. So that's something that we can look to arrange as well. The majority of lenders do require the borrower to have a UK bank account. There are a number of lenders who are happy to kind of set up a UK bank account for the client as part of their as part of their lending process. Obviously, if you were to go through a company like GetGround, they'll be able to help you out with the UK bank account themselves. If you don't have access to a UK bank account, that's that's not an issue, as we do work with lenders who can work around this as well. In terms of the rates that you'd be looking at, primarily for buy-to-let mortgages, you're kind of looking from the low 2% up to about the 4.5%. Usually this is stress test, which means the kind of affordability calculation is based on the rental income that the property receives. Unfortunately, each lender has their own affordability calculator. So again, that's where Capricorn can come in, can be of service and add real value. As we deal with these different lenders every single day, and we know kind of what makes the lenders tick, so that we can kind of get the best rates and deals available. As opposed to buy-to-let mortgages, we also arrange residential mortgages, and these are usually lower rates, kind of from the about 1.5% mark up to about 2%, kind of again depending on the borrower's situation and location of the property and the loan amount that they're looking for again. Much like the buy-to-let mortgage rates, if you're looking to borrow a lower loan to value, the rate is usually more favourable. Lender arrangement fees. Now, this really does vary from lender to lender. For residential mortgages, it's usually quite cheap, kind of about £1,000. Usually this can be kind of added to the loan or deducted from the loan. Some lenders will ask for this to be paid in advance. For buy-to-let mortgages, it's usually a little bit higher. Sometimes it's a flat fee around the £3,000 mark, but the majority of the time it's a percentage of the loan amount. So this can be kind of 1 to 2% really. A lot of the lenders that we deal with can also offer interest-only mortgages. This is something that's extremely popular for buy-to-let properties. Basically, the advantage of this is that the rental income is going to satisfy the interest payments, so that the property can appreciate in value, and that's kind of your capital growth. Interest-only mortgages are also available for residential property. Usually there is a bit of a haircut on the LTV that the lenders are offering for this. So lending to corporate structures. As Joe mentioned, definitely seeing more of a trend in individuals purchasing through company ownerships for a number of the reasons that Joe explained. Unfortunately, because it is a bit more specialized, not all lenders do lend to limited companies. However, as we're a whole of market, any that do, we have access to, and we have strong relationships with them. Primarily, it needs to be a UK limited company, but as I mentioned earlier, we do work with lenders who can consider BVIs, offshore trust companies, and non-UK companies as well. Some lenders do require the shareholders or directors to provide personal guarantees. Again, this isn't always the case. Sometimes the legal process may be a little bit more time-consuming, which unfortunately means it's a little bit more expensive. but it's kind of one of those costs to weigh up, in comparison to the tax savings that you'd be making, like Joe mentioned, for example. One question that we do get, which is quite common, is when is the ideal time to remortgage? So ideally, you kind of want to be looking to remortgage, kind of within a couple of months of your property coming up to maturity, or your mortgage coming up to maturity. If it is inside of kind of a fixed rate period, it's probably not when you want to do it, as there's usually quite substantial exit penalties. But kind of as soon as it gets out of that fixed rate period, that's when we'll be looking to basically remortgage you onto a cheaper rate. Also able to remortgage if you're looking to cap raise for further investment. Like I mentioned earlier, this is something that we're seeing quite a lot at the moment with such a bullish market. If you're looking to change ownership structure of the property, this is also a time when you can look to remortgage as well. Some lenders will require you to transfer to a different product. Others can be a bit more flexible in terms of that. A lot of lenders do actually offer reduced fees and incentives for remortgaging. So the lender might be prepared to waive the arrangement fee and sometimes absorb the costs of the legal fees as well. In terms of Capricorn, the kind of business model that we provide is we don't charge any upfront fees. So our consultation is absolutely free of charge. What we'll look to do is we'll look to get in touch with you, kind of arrange either a Zoom or Teams meeting. If you're based in one of the areas where we have one of our offices, absolutely more than happy to meet face to face. And we wouldn't charge a fee until you have your mortgage offer approved. The mortgage offer is produced by the lender and it's been accepted by yourself. So instead of us kind of working for you, we're really looking to work with you and kind of build that long-term relationship throughout the whole mortgage process, so that hopefully there's an opportunity to work together in the future as well. So just a very quick rundown of the application process. Like I mentioned, we'll get in touch with you to arrange a quick meeting. We kind of take do a full assessment of your financial position. We'll then go speak with some lenders and look to make a couple of recommendations. These might be different types of products. For example, we might find a product that's a 2-year fixed rate, a 5-year fixed rate, and a 2-year tracker, for example, just to give you a little bit of option. And then we'll look to kind of sit down with you and discuss the advantages of each of those, and then what would fit best for your profile. The approval in principle can be turned around within kind of 24, 48 hours, depending on the lender. Some can, we can kind of get that back within a couple of hours. Unfortunately, some lenders are a little bit slower, and this can take, a couple of days. So once the case has been approved in principle and you as the client are looking to proceed, we'll look to submit the application and request any documents that are required from yourself from the lender. The bank will then instruct the surveyor to do the valuation. This is something that we'll be chasing as well. The bank will usually be looking for the valuation of the property, the reinstatement cost, and also if it's a buy-to-let, they'll be looking at a rental figure as well. The mortgage offer is usually issued within kind of 4 to 6 weeks, and that's sent to the solicitor, and then that kind of remains valid for between 3 to 6 months, so that we can look to proceed to completion as soon as possible, basically. Solicitor may require a little bit longer, or a couple of weeks following the mortgage offer to draw down the funds. This is kind of within a month, but usually we can get it done within a week or two. So here's just a couple of examples of real life examples that have taken place within our firm. So as you can see, looking to get up to some of the max loan to value there at 75%, as it is one of the higher loan to values and loan amounts that we're looking to achieve compared to the property value. Some of the rates are a little bit more premium. As you can see, there's options for interest only and also for capital and repayment. Capricorn, as mortgage advisors, we do charge a brokerage fee. and this is £1,500. However, like I mentioned, this isn't actually charged until we've done all the underwriting, the survey's been done, the case has been fully submitted to the lender, and the mortgage offer has been produced and accepted by yourself. So again, we're really looking to work with you to get to that process and then proceed to completion as soon as possible, so that you guys can get the keys to the house in your hand. If we were to do that one case with you, the brokerage fee would be £1,500 for each subsequent loan or deal afterwards. So whether we were to maybe remortgage this property in a couple of years, or if you were then looking to purchase another property, our brokerage fee would just be £500 for each of those following mortgages. Just another example here with a slightly higher or slightly increased purchase price. To be honest, the higher the purchase price is and the higher the loan amount is, usually you can get a bit more of a competitive rate. Just something for consideration. But yeah, as you can see, you can kind of go up to 75% there again. Equally, if you were to go for the lower loan to value, as you can see on the right, the rate is a bit more, a little bit lower and a bit more competitive there. But again, both of these kind of products have interest only and repayment options available. We also are the market leader in kind of proceeding with the Smarter 365 software, and this is basically a technology platform where we're able to work with our clients and our introducers, and they're able to kind of see a live step-by-step process of where each application is and their portfolio that they have with us, what stage they're all at, basically. It's very interactive, and it kind of gives a bit more control to the client, so that they can understand exactly where each stage is in the mortgage application. So yes, there's myself and Gavin, who are based in our Hong Kong office. These are some of our contact details here. I believe the guys are going to be sending around this presentation afterwards, so that would be great. And if you do have any mortgage questions or requirements, or just interested to learn a little bit about the market, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We'd be more than happy to have a chat and sit down and see if we can help. I understand that there's going to be a bit of a Q&A session now, so I'll pass back over to you, Stephen and Elliot.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you to all of those who pre-submitted their questions for the Q&A beforehand. We're going to have a selection of those questions read out, and they'll be put to members of the panel who are best placed to answer those questions.
Brilliant. So the first question we've got, Stephen, is for you. Paul would like to know, how have you seen occupancy change pre and post COVID? What's the effect been on the market?
Yeah, that's a good question, Paul. It was when COVID first hit our shores or hit the news, a lot of the investors were actually on the phone, or co-investors actually on the phone. So before COVID, keeping it quite simple, before COVID, our occupancy was hovering around 97%. After COVID, and when it truly hit, it's still 97%. People still needed somewhere to live. You saw offices and leisure and retail affected by the pandemic, but you didn't see anyone kicked on the street. So number one asset class now in the whole of the UK and probably the world is residential. So a good example of that is you saw Academy Apartments and Gary Neville with Manchester United there talking about it. That actually launched in September last year, which was well into the pandemic, and that took occupancy again went straight into 97% on PC. So the demand is really high. Residential as a whole is clearly COVID proof, and moving forward, if there's another COVID-20, touch wood, hopefully there's not, or other issues, really residential is the safest asset class you can hold your money in. So good question, Paul.
Brilliant. And Elliot, one for you. Sue would like to know, currently there's a lot of different developments available in Manchester. Sue's worried that there might be an oversupply of new property in the city. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm sure many of you who have been looking for properties have seen. Manchester at the moment, there is a lot of new developments. If you get the train into Manchester, if you drive in, it's a city of cranes. I actually think Manchester has more cranes than anywhere else in Europe at the moment. So there is a big construction boom going on. But I think as you would have seen during the presentation, you know, Manchester is drastically undersupplied when it comes to property. The city centre of Manchester alone needs 11,000 new properties to be built every single year. There's only currently around about 7,000 new properties being built every single year. So still a big shortfall of, you know, 4,000 properties every single year. As Stephen mentioned, at Manchester Apartments, we're 70 times oversubscribed when it comes to our tenants. So regardless of the amount of new developments coming online, there's still a drastic undersupply of quality, suitable accommodation in the city of Manchester. So yeah, thanks for sending that in, Sue. But no, it's not something that we envisage.
Brilliant. And Joey, one for you here. Cameron says that he's considering investing from abroad and would like to know how you guys at Get Ground treat money that's coming in from overseas, specifically in different currencies to the sterling.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it depends what kind of currency that you're bringing in. But generally speaking, we have similar to, I presume, the guys at Beach Holdings and at Capricorn as well, an AML procedure. So we just have to make sure that the money that you're bringing across is clearly accounted for. We also have a currency cloud enabled on our platform. So if you are bringing money in from abroad and that money is in US dollars or wherever it may be, you can bring it, you can transfer it straight from your personal bank account through Currency Cloud straight into your Get Ground limited company bank account. So how do we treat it? Probably same as everybody else is the answer to that question, but how do we facilitate it? You know, it's very, very easy to bring money in from that is currently held in other currencies.
Great, thank you. And one for you, Marion. Tim says that if he initially buys a property as a buy-to-let, can he then switch it to a residential mortgage if he wanted to later down the line?
Yes, thanks very much for that question, Tim. Absolutely, this is something that we're seeing, you know, quite often at the moment. So what people will do, especially international investors, they'll look to purchase a property as a buy-to-let. And then be looking to move to the UK in due course. As long as they're not residing in the property when the buy-to-let mortgage is in place, that's absolutely fine. If they were to then move to the UK and look to live in the property, we would need to remortgage from a buy-to-let to a residential, which is something that we're more than happy to help with.
Brilliant, thank you. Stephen, another one for you here. Fiona's saying that from looking online, obviously Fiona's done her homework here, she can see that Manchester Apartments have achieved some market leading rents. How have Manchester Apartments been able to do that, especially in the current climate of the last 12 months?
Yeah, good question. So really, as per the presentation, it's really been excessively tenant focused. So doing that super premium product, you'll often see, if you just go on Rightmove, you'll see a lot of vanilla sort of white boxes, as they call them. They all look the same and often looking a little bit tired. If you go with that premium quality focused product, it will always create a high demand and high occupancy and high rents. So that's really the key to it. You often hear a term build to rent, BTR, you guys might have heard of before, which typically involves a developer going to an architect. They'll spend a lot of time focused on building a shiny glass tower and then little afterthought really for the inside. So that's a normal flow. With Beach, when we find a new building or a new site, we actually do flip it around. We focus on the tenant. So we'll invite our lettings guys in who get 3,000 inquiries every month, and they're in touch with people that actually want to live in these. So we call it rent to build. So we'll actually design it specifically with the tenants in mind. So to keep it simple, it's really being high quality, obsessively tenant focused, which will always create a high demand and high rentals. And that's why you see them on our website at those rates you can see out there.
Brilliant. One for you here, Marion. Judy's got a bit of a scenario that she'd like to run past you. So Judy says that she's self-employed, she's currently renting and doesn't currently own any property herself. Is there a specialist mortgage provider out there who could help her attain a buy-to-let mortgage? She's looking to borrow about 250k with a deposit of about 50.
Thanks very much for that, Julie. I mean, there's always a lender who's able to help. Obviously, that is a situation that is, kind of not one of the standard situations, but that's really where you know, the help with the Capricorn you know, advisor can come in, and you know, we'll go across the market and kind of you know, consider your criteria against lenders' criteria, and then you know, look to provide some options for you. So yeah, absolutely, there's something that we could look to do. While that loan to value that you'd be looking for is, you know, slightly over the 75–80%, we do actually work with some second charge lenders who might be able to, you know, kind of top up the LTV as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And Joey, one from you here. Leonard would like to know, at which point should you set up a company in order to buy property, and does GetGround handle the taxes as well?
Hey Leonard, yeah, great questions. So the best time to bring us into a transaction is either immediately before or immediately after your reservation deposit goes in. So if you're buying through a developer like Beach Holdings, preferably as soon after you've placed your reservation deposit as possible. If you're buying through a traditional estate agent, as soon as you get verbal acceptance of your offer. All right, so that answers the question. Do we handle taxes? That's a little bit of an arbitrary question. We will handle all of the taxes relating to this limited company structure, but this limited company structure only. Okay, so if you have other dealings, you have other investments in stocks and shares or Bitcoin or whatever it may be, and you currently have an accountant to manage those incomes as well, please don't get rid of him quite yet, because you will need him. But what we will do is we will look after all of the associated taxes that your limited company or the running of this property will likely incur. So I hope that answers your question.
Brilliant, thanks Joey. And a question for you, Elliot. We covered a lot of this in the presentation, but Abdul would like to know, what is it about Manchester that makes it outperform regional cities in the way that it does? What does it have that other cities just simply don't?
Putting my proud Mancunian hat on, you know, having grown up in the city, having seen the city drastically change over, I'd say, the last 10 years. You know, when I was growing up, there wasn't really much here. There was a small city centre, a couple of shops. I left, moved abroad, Dubai, Singapore, sold property all around the world. But then coming back to Manchester, it's just a completely new city. Looking at the changes to the infrastructure, looking at all of these new skyscrapers that we have here, looking at just the vast amount of property that's been built. But that is to cater towards you know, the new offices that are here, BBC, ITV, Media City, Noma, which is Manchester's new commercial district. All of this migration of big business, the growth of the universities, the growth of the city centre itself, that city centre core expanding outwards and eating up a lot of the kind of the tired areas that were on the fringes of the city. These are now all booming, bustling areas in their own right. So I think all of these things, the movement of young people, London, a lot of my friends who, you know, when they finished university or when they finished school, moved to London to chase the jobs, to chase the opportunities. A lot of these jobs and opportunities now, with this migration of business, are located within Manchester. So all of these factors, I think, have really meant or enabled Manchester to become one of the key, if not the key, investment city in the UK.
Brilliant. Marion, one for you here. Dennis would like to know, when do I need to start the mortgage process when buying a new build property?
Yeah, thanks very much for that question, Dennis. It's one of those where, you know, it's always good to get your ducks in a row earlier than you need to. So we're very happy to kind of have that initial chat and kind of give you an idea of those, based on your situation, kind of the indicative terms and rates that you could be looking at. But in terms of actually starting the full mortgage process, we kind of look to do that about 6 months, between 6 and 3 months prior to completion of the property. Like I mentioned before, some lenders, mortgage offers are only valid for between 3 and 6 months. Usually we can get that extended, but just kind of for safety reasons, it's best to kind of get that sorted 3 to 6 months before. That means it gives us enough time to collect all the documents, you know, answer any lender queries that they might have, and also, work with the solicitors in the UK as well. So kind of 3 to 6 months prior to completion would be my suggestion.
Brilliant, thank you. Final 2 questions here. The first one for Joey. Alan would like to know, can I change ownership from personal to company for any existing properties that I already own?
Hi, Alan. That's a great question. It's not an easy one to answer, I'm afraid. My first port of call here would be to say, if that is something that you want to do, I would seek legal and taxation advice in the first instance. Okay. Traditionally speaking, it is possible to do, but a limited company structure is commonly thought of as its own separate legal entity in the same way that your name is. So if you want to transfer from a limited company or from a personal ownership capacity over to a limited company structure, it does unfortunately constitute a sale, and therefore you have the associated costs of a sale, which is capital gains tax, solicitors' fees on both the buying and the selling side, any mortgage early repayment charges, limited company creation costs, and finally stamp duty. So if that is something that you want to do, and in many cases it is still worth doing, please do be aware that it just comes, if you do it in that way anyway, with traditional costs associated with it. There may be other ways of doing it, but what I would always say is, with questions like that, if that is something that you want to explore, I'd seek legal and tax advice in the first instance.
Great, thanks, Joe. And the final question, Elliot, for you is from Faisal, who says, why do you think the property market has seen so much activity over the past few months, and do you see a downturn on the horizon?
It's something that a lot of people have mentioned. Purely just they've seen the level of activity that's taken place over the past, I'd say, 6 to 8 months. I think the stamp duty holiday announcement, that was a real kind of rocket that got the property market moving. There was the potential there for individuals to save thousands of pounds. Here at Beach Holdings, we've had individual investors save upwards of £25,000 on some properties, especially those based overseas, who've been able to benefit from that stamp duty holiday. So that was one of the real things that helped motivate and keep the property market moving. I mean, we're continuing to invest, hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds into the Manchester market. We don't envisage any kind of downturn. Don't look at us, look at what people like Savills and JLL have to say. They fully expect the Manchester market to increase over the next 5 years, anywhere between 17 and 25%, depending on who you believe. So whilst we may not see the volume of activity that we've seen over the past couple of months, people really trying to get in before the end of the holiday, I still envisage a market which is going to be buoyant. I still envisage investors making good money over the next 5 to 10 years. And as with any property investment, it's not about trying to identify the right time to buy. It's about buying property and holding on to it long term. Property has shown over many generations, investing in property will always make you money. You should always consider property as a long-term investment, not something that you're going to, buy and sell or flip. If you're investing in property for the long term, you will always make money.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's all the questions that we had.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much to everyone who has attended today. It was great to see so many of you from many different countries across the world. After the event, you will all receive an email with a link if you want to watch back and get any more details or any more information that perhaps you may have missed. The contact details for all of the presenters today as well will also be sent around. So if you have any more questions or you want to get back in contact with any of the experts on the panel, they'll be more than happy to respond. I myself, I've got a fully staffed sales team, so for anyone that's got any specific product related inquiries or is interested in finding out what we've got for sale at Beach Holdings, by all means get in contact straight away. We'll be able to assist in terms of giving you some information on what is currently available. And my team and Stephen, and I'm sure the guys at Get Ground and Capricorn are all going to be in the same position. So thank you very much. It's been great, and I hope to see you all again on the next webinar that we'll be planning in the future. Perfect. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone. Bye now.